All right, how's it going? It's today in art. Today is August 24th, 2018. Uh, I didn't do one yesterday because I took a buddy out to a concert and I drank a lot. So, yeah, that's why I contemplated doing one today for yesterday and also one today for today. But after the 30-day mark, I'm like, I don't know if I still want to do it daily after that point because I want to get the first 30 out to get like an initial push of content to be out there. And after that, whether I want to like scale it all the way back to like once a week or maybe 2 to 3 times a week, I'm not sure. Or if it's proven that like daily uploads of these podcasts are turning out to be fairly fruitful, then I'll do that. I don't know. Like I said, this is still early on. This is still experimenting, but this is today in art for the August 24th. I'm filming this like at 11 p.m. at night, so I'm just barely getting it in there. So, been spending all day kind of recovering a little bit. All right. Let's let's get into this. Got some art news pulled up. I want to get into, will art become a casualty of U.S.-China trade war? This is with the New York Times. Came out about 10 hours ago. You got an image here. Will this? No. A painting by Zhang Zhaogang. This is to be included in an exhibition at the Pace Gallery in New York in September. As the work originated in China, it could eventually be subject to new tariffs. It's kind of, I think it said it was oil and like collage on paper. They're saying he did like eerie kind of family portraits. So I'm assuming this is like a younger girl, maybe like a younger sister or something. All right, this article is by Scott Rayburn, and it came out today. The United States has started a trade war with China, and art is caught in the crossfire. The administration announced this month that President Trump had proposed duties as high as 25% on $200 billion worth of imported Chinese goods to encourage China to change its harmful policies. The proposed tariffs, initially set at 10%, followed two earlier rounds of penalties. The latest list of targeted Chinese goods ran to 205 pages. It included sandblasting machines, eels, fresh or chilled, excluding fillets, hats, and at the bottom of the list, paintings and drawings executed entirely by hand, original sculptures, and antiques more than 100 years old. The tariffs would apply to all artworks that originated in China, regardless of how they entered the United States. That means American buyers could be required to pay 25% more for a Ming Dynasty bowl sold by British owner at an auction in New York, as well as for a painting by a young Beijing-based artist at a gallery in Hong Kong. The announcement has caused outrage in the art world. James Lally, the founder of J.J. Lally & Company, a dealer based in New York that specializes in Asian art, said that the proposed tariffs were a matter of great concern to museums, collectors, curators, and dealers worldwide. It will have a chilling impact, he said. It will quickly reduce the market for Chinese art in America to a backwater. Professional organizations like the Art Dealers Association of America, the Association of Art Museum Directors, and the British Antiques Dealers Association have also stated their opposition to the proposal. Ooh. Dozens of companies voiced concerns to trade officials during 6 days of public hearings in Washington this past week, many warning that the proposed tariffs would hurt American consumers. Peter Tompe, a lawyer based in Washington, represented two lobbying groups that worked on behalf of museums, dealers, and collectors at the hearings on Wednesday. Mr. Tompe said a member of the trade committee asked him one question: since art is a luxury item, wouldn't people pay? See, there's this, when you think like locally and stuff, you think like people will buy art, to buy and like support local artists, but they're buying it because they like it. But when you get into like higher price works, when they get into like the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even up to like millions, a lot of times those are thought of as more you're buying an investment. It's like a different kind of investment rather than necessarily buying a certain piece of artwork that you like to hang in your house. So I can kind of understand that, I guess. I don't know who pays $20,000 for a painting. I mean, I understand that there's people that have the money and they'll buy it because they like it. I mean, if I had the money, I'd probably buy certain Monet paintings that I'd like if I can get a hold of. But still, you have to even think like at that, whether even you're not buying it as an investment, it's still, I mean, more than likely, unless it's shown to be a fake later, it's like the value of it's going to go up over time, especially as it becomes more of a historic object. So, Mr. Tompas said he had told the committee that the main problem was slow turnover of inventory in the art trade and that a tariff would mean greater capital outlays by dealers. Dealers will need to pay up front, but it may take a while to make good, he said, adding that dealers also had to cope with a recent Supreme Court decision to allow internet sales to be taxed. Sotheby's, Christie's, and the Asian Week New York Association of Dealers said in a written complaint that the United States, not China, would be affected most. Imposing duties on Chinese origin art would not impact the trade practices or policies of China, since the vast majority of such artwork is imported into the United States from countries other than China, the complaint read. And the United States market is small compared to the amount of Chinese art and antiquities sold in mainland China. Last year, $7.1 billion worth of Chinese art and antiques were sold at auctions across the world, according to a report published this month by ArtNet. Of these sales, $5.1 billion came from auctions in mainland China, where the operations of foreign auction houses are restricted. $408 million came from the United States, though that number was up 62% from 2016, compared with a 6% increase for China. So China has a huge Chinese art market, which makes sense. I mean, it seems like they're controlling 75%, something like that. They were like at 5 to 10%, if that. Dealers have pointed out that adding a 25% duty to the fees known as the buyer's premium could deter both buyers and sellers of Chinese art at auctions in the United States, reversing growth in that sector. Then here you have an 18th century vase, or is it vase, whichever one, to be offered at Sotheby's Hong Kong in October. That's pretty cool looking. It's not punishing the Chinese, it's punishing the Americans. Giselle Correz, a specialist in ancient Chinese artworks who is based in Brussels, said of the proposed tariffs, the international trade will go back to London, Paris, and Hong Kong. In recent years, sales of the finest Chinese antiques have been dominated by Chinese dealers and collectors. The market for international contemporary art, on the other hand, is dominated by American dealers and collectors. They are also alarmed by what the impact of a proposed tariff would be on the Chinese artists they sell. So that's kind of interesting, but I can understand that like America being the center of like contemporary art itself, especially with like New York and LA. You kind of think maybe they're like Paris to some degree, and like Tokyo I think is fairly big, but when you think more about this, it's talking about like let's talk about of like Chinese origin. Where's it at? And it's like so it's talking about paintings and drawings executed entirely by hand, original sculptures, and antiques more than 100 years old. So all the like older was it Ming Dynasty stuff, like all the older arts and crafts, if you want to call it, of the Chinese culture. But I can see that being purchased to put in museums in China. So I guess that makes sense. Did I read this? In recent years, sales of the finest Chinese antiques have been dominated by Chinese dealers and collectors. The market for international contemporary art, on the other hand, is dominated by American dealers and collectors. They are also alarmed by what impact of a proposed tariff would be on the Chinese artists they sell. Yes, okay. One of the strengths of the American economy has been it's a free market for all, said Jeffrey Deitch, a leading New York dealer and curator. It's made New York City the world capital of the art business. To jeopardize this situation could have very serious consequences. Next month, Mr. Deitch is set to open a new gallery in Los Angeles with Zodiac, a museum-style exhibition of works by the Chinese artist Ah Weiwei, or is it A Weiwei, who currently lives in Berlin. The centerpiece of the show will be the 2013 installation Stools, comprised of nearly 6,000 wooden seats that the artist salvaged from across China. Previously seen at the Gropius Bar in Berlin in 2014, the work is to be priced at $2.9 million. That's a lot. The proposed import tariff would be determined by the location of production, not the nationality of the person creating it. The Office of the United States Trade Representative said in a statement emailed in response to questions, Mr. Oz works have been produced in Germany. Mr. Oz works having been produced in Germany would be exempt from any penalties. The situation would be different, however, for works from contemporary artists with studios in China. The New York Gallery Pace, which has branches in Hong Kong and Beijing, represent no fewer than 14 Chinese artists. On September 7th, its space on West 24th Street in Manhattan is to host an exhibition of 11 new works by Zhang Zhaogang, I'm sure I'm messing that name up, who is based in Beijing. The artist's haunting Bloodlines series of family portraits is much coveted by both Western and Asian collectors, with large paintings selling for as much as $12 million in auctions. And he was the artist who produced this piece at the beginning. And $12 million is quite a lot of money. That's a lot of money. The show should open before any tariffs are imposed on imported artworks, but Mark Glimcher, the president and chief executive at Pace Gallery, is still concerned. It's like putting a tariff on stocks. If the price of an item is significantly altered by a tariff, the market will look elsewhere, Mr. Glimcher said. Purchases in New York are already subject to a local sales tax of nearly 9%, he said, adding, if we had to raise the prices by 25%, it would be difficult to sell and show. Any protection of the U.S. art market will have the opposite effect. Mr. Glimcher continued, it does nothing positive. Any protection of the U.S. art market will have no opposite effect. All right. But the imposition of punitive import tariffs would affect more than the art market in the United States. It would also make it difficult for Chinese artists to exhibit their work, diminishing cultural exchange. I told you it's like late. That's why I want to try to get this out. It's about more than money, said Mr. Dempsey, a former director of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. This is where the conscious is reached about what art is important. Consensus. This is where the consensus is reached about what art is important. What art or is art? So I guess he's saying it's making it harder for certain Chinese artists to be brought over, so they're going to be scrutinized more of which ones are really important to bring over if all this is to go through. If you're a Chinese artist, Mr. Deitch added, you want to show your work here. You want to be in the center of the international art discourse. So far, the Trump administration has gotten low marks for its concern for cultural matters, but over the coming weeks, the art world says it will work to convince lawmakers that if the United States wants to wage an economic war with China, taxing art would be a self-inflicted wound. So all this is interesting. So I think like most people, when they hear about the tariffs, it's just like steel and aluminum coming from like various countries, mainly China. I mean, I had no idea it was like kind of an art thing. But the way they have it set up too, like paintings and drawings executed entirely by hand, original sculptures, and antiques more than 100 years old. And the way this article lays it out, even if it's like a Ming Dynasty vase that's being sold in, what did it say? Even if it's what they have, is this means American buyers could be required to pay 25% more for a Ming Dynasty bowl sold by a British owner at an auction in New York. So, I don't know. It seems like there's obviously I don't really know about the 205 pages, but it seems like there's kind of a lot of different specifics in there. Whether this is good or bad, I don't know. I mean, maybe it will weed out less important art. I don't know. Maybe it's a bad idea. I don't have enough idea on like whether tariffs themselves are effective or not and whether they really work. I mean, I guess time will tell. So maybe when this goes through, if it goes through in like a year or 2 or 5 or 10 years, however long it takes, I guess maybe we'll see. I mean, I can kind of understand the tariffs being put in place to keep certain manufacturing jobs in America, but when it comes to art itself, I don't know if it's necessarily going to like help anything. But yeah, it's late. I'm tired. This has been Today in Art for August 24th, 2018. All the links will be in the description for this article. I'll have this up on YouTube. On my YouTube channel is Christopher Pack. It'll be on Anchor, and it's getting pushed out to other podcast platforms too. It'll be Today in Art. Then also my Twitter is ChrisPack1986, and you can look me up on Instagram and Facebook as well. So all that will be in the description. So peace. Have a good one. I'm going to upload this and go to bed because I'm tired. So, all right. Later, gang. I'll catch you tomorrow.